work is paid off.
We can run it,
shoot it,
D you up, and shut you down.
if we hustle,
And play our game with passion,
then we will win.
then we will win.
The Jayhawks are about to live up to their promise.
Roy Williams and the Jayhawks are heading back to the Final Four.
The Terps are about to keep a promise that we made to ourselves.
Back-to-back years, the Maryland Terrapins are going to the Final Four.
We're going to get this one for Coach.
We won't let this opportunity slip by.
We can do it all,
In the half court.
or in the end. We made it to the Final Four.
And we're here to win it all.
3 weeks and a dozen cities ago, 65 teams with Georgia on their minds embarked upon a journey in quest of a crown. And now we've reached the end of the road to the Final Four, Atlanta, Georgia. The Georgia Dome has played host to the Olympics, the Super Bowl, and the Rolling Stones. And 2 hours from now, this freshly installed Michigan maple floor will serve as the stage for Indiana and Oklahoma, Kansas, and Maryland in the Final Four. And we are next door in Hoop City, the NCAA's interactive celebration of college basketball, where fans are generally hooping it up. Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Gumbel. Welcome to the Final Four show as CBS Sports continues its exclusive coverage of the 2002 NCAA Men's National Basketball Championship Tournament. This is our 21st consecutive year televising the Final Four. In the first of tonight's national semifinals, you'll see Indiana, the 5th seed from the South, whose road to Atlanta included a conquest of defending champion Duke. The Hoosiers will face Oklahoma, the 2nd seed out of the West. The Sooners have convincingly cast aside all comers thus far. Tip time is 6:07 Eastern. In the second national semifinal, the Midwest top seed, Kansas, is out to bring coach Roy Williams his first national title in this, his 3rd Final Four. And the Jayhawks will face another tournament top seed, Maryland, from the East. The Terps are the only team making a return trip to the Final Four, and they're here to complete a mission that fell short last year. Tip time is about 8:47 Eastern time. Joining me as he has throughout the road to the Final Four is my partner, Clark Kellogg. And you know, it's an awful lot of work for these 4 teams to have reached this point, but their work has only just begun.
It certainly is, Greg. A point well made and well taken. It's been close to a week since these teams realized they were going to be getting to the Georgia Dome playing for a championship. Now I think all of these players, all of these teams are ready to roll out their best combination of execution, poise, and tenacity to see if they can win a title.
And Clark, take a gander at what they're playing for. The NCAA National Championship Trophy, newly redesigned this year. The winners will claim that on Monday night. Now, one of the biggest concerns for Indiana is the condition of their junior point guard, Tom Coverdale, who suffered a high ankle sprain in the second half of the Hoosiers' regional final win over Kent State. Earlier this morning at the team hotel, Coverdale received last-minute treatment from Indiana trainer Tim Garl.
It's feeling a lot better than it was, so didn't feel too bad this morning. But it's just sore when I do certain stuff.
The stim is designed to help reduce the inflammation, help modify the pain a little bit. And then the ice is, again, to help modify the pain and reduce the blood flow so it doesn't get any additional swelling.
It's been kind of hard because, you know, all the questions you get about, you know, and I didn't even know the questions myself, but, you know, I think you just have to shut it out and be ready to play.
Now, all indications from Indiana, in fact, Coach Mike Davis said this morning that Tom Coverdale is ready to go. But let's assume that once he gets out on the floor, he doesn't have that push, he doesn't have the strength in the ankle. What does that do to the Hoosiers?
Well, it made Donald Perry's, the freshman point guard's book bag, that much heavier. He's going to have to do a lot of ball handling. I think you'll see Jared Jeffries take on some of the ball handling responsibility and maybe an expanded role for A.J. Moye off the bench.
All right, Clark, Oklahoma has an injury concern of its own. Also a sprained left ankle ankle. It belongs to junior guard Quantus White. But White did participate fully in yesterday's and this morning's shoot-arounds, and he will start for the Sooners. Now, the Indiana-Oklahoma matchup brings together two coaches, each of whom is making his first Final Four appearance. The Hoosiers' Mike Davis and the Sooners' Kelvin Sampson. Earlier, Clark sat down with the coaches on the eve of the biggest game of their careers.
Well, guys, this is a terrific accomplishment for both of you individually and for your basketball programs. What have you allowed yourselves to think about during this week? I'll start with you, Calvin.
I guess if I had idle time, which is very little during this week, I think that the appreciation of making it to a Final Four and how humbling it is, knowing that there's some great coaches that never got this experience. That's made it more rewarding for me, but also you realize that it's very humbling.
Like Coach Sampson says, a lot of coaches out there I know a lot better than I am. They had never made it, and so for me to get here is definitely a blessing.
Let's talk about the significance for you guys as head coaches of color to be here in the Final Four at the same time, and what kind of impact that possibly could have down the road, and how you guys both feel about that.
I think for minority coaches, it's important to have hope. You know, when I started coaching, my role models were John Thompson, John Chaney, Nolan Richardson, George Raveling, guys like that, because they looked like I did. They were people of color that was achieving at a high level. And I think that the most important thing for any person, regardless of whether they're white, black, or whatever, is they have to have hope in their profession. And I would hope that Mike and I coaching in the Final Four, there's some youngster somewhere, some young coach, a person of color, that looks at us and says, you know, if I work hard and I do things the right way, then one day I can achieve that too. And I think that's a tremendous responsibility.
To be a black coach here, to me is good, because there's a lot of assistant coaches out there that want the opportunity that I've gotten.
One of you guys won't be playing on Monday. If it happens to be Kelvin or Mike, who are you rooting for on Monday night?
If we lose to Mike, I'll be pulling hard for Mike to have great success, but Gary and Roy are good friends of mine as well.
Okay, Mike.
Well, I'm definitely going to pull for Coach Sampson. And I say that because at a low time in my early coaching career, that led, I still have it. And he told me, always believe in yourself and never doubt yourself. And you know, there's been some special people in my life, and Coach didn't really know me personally. And to read that made me feel good, so I'm always pulling for him.
All right, well, congratulations to both of you, and good luck.
Thank you, Clark.
You know, Clark and I had a chance to talk about this earlier in the tournament, and it's worth revisiting it here. When you get to the Final Four, how much does coaching experience count?
It's really hard to qualify, but you know it's value added, Greg. Anytime you have experience in something of this magnitude, again, the first time for both of these coaches. So because that's the case, I think the fact that both have well prepared, it's going to come down to how their teams execute their particular game plan.
Funny how it always comes down to players,
That's right.
isn't it?
It typically does.
Next year, the Georgia Dome will host the women's Final Four. This year, they're in San Antonio. In case you missed it last night, the first semifinal game was Duke against Oklahoma. Duke in black, Oklahoma in white. Isis Tillis gets the layup off the inbounds pass.
But then Oklahoma would answer with a 9-0 run. Rosalind Raw is going to get 3 of her career-high 26 right there. And the Sooners celebrating already as they would go on to win 86-71. And Coach Sherry Cole and her Sooners play for a championship tomorrow.
And they'll be going up against the Huskies of the University of Connecticut. That is Sue Bird. She is some player. 18 points last night. She will hit the 3 here. And the Huskies went up 23-15 and never had to look back.
They kept the foot on the gas pedal all game long. Bird to Williams to Asia Jones. And the Huskies rolled by 23.
And it's going to be University of Connecticut against Oklahoma in the national championship game. You know, the women's national championship game between Oklahoma and Connecticut will be shown tomorrow night on ESPN. A reminder, you can find a complete analysis of tonight's Final Four matchups in the head-to-head feature at cbs.sportsline.com. America Online users enter the keyword CBS Sportsline. Coming up on the Final Four show from Atlanta, the story of the Indiana Hoosiers' improbable return to basketball glory. And the Jayhawks' Drew Gooden and his intercontinental journey to the Final Four. And up next, Bonnie Bernstein with a look at Maryland's Byron Mouton, who has turned a tragic personal loss into a strong motivation for success. and Oklahoma square off in the first game, and then later Kansas clashes with Maryland. The Terps are looking for redemption for the bitter defeat they suffered at the hands of Duke in last year's Final Four, but one Terrapin is drawing inspiration from another source. Bonnie Bernstein has the story. Bonnie?
Well, Greg, Byron Mouton might not be the most recognizable name among Maryland starters, but his presence, particularly on the defensive end, has been critical in the Terps' trek back to the Final Four. Interestingly enough, though, when he transferred from Tulane to College Park 3 years ago, it wasn't for the hoops. It was because he had a brother and sister living nearby. Who knew back then how much he would need them in times of family tragedy? Byron Mouton is a crowd pleaser in College Park, and nothing pleases his brother and sister more than having him close by.
I was making a comment this year. I said I was going to ask him for his Social Security number this year so I could claim him on my taxes. I said, I feel as though he's like my child. You know, I call him, do you need anything? Do you need any money? So I have, you know, I try to do my best and support him, knowing that he's in college and I know what it's like.
Clyde, you're only 30 minutes from campus, so how many times does your little brother show up at your doorstep?
All the time. I mean, he's run straight to the kitchen and grab all the food he can get before he go back to school.
I just want some soul food. You know, my brother, you know, my sister do a great job. But my brother he tries, and you know, I just want to get some soul food. And you know, we from Louisiana, we like rice, we like meat, we like gravy, and you know, I just wanted some of that food when going back home.
Clyde and Darlene rarely miss a game, and December 3rd was no exception. But after this win, there was nothing to celebrate.
We drove on the Beltway for a while, and I mean, I didn't know how to tell him. So eventually I just, you know, let it out and say something bad happened, and you know, our brother just got, you know, shot. I mean, he got killed.
Well, I said, no, stop crying. You know, it's not true. And yeah, then he just started crying, and you know, just a moment of silence, and I just started crying too. I just couldn't believe it.
On December 2nd, 32-year-old Kevin Mouton was murdered in Houston, Texas. Suddenly, the man considered the comedian of the Mouton clan was lost forever. Can you imagine having to hear that news over the phone?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what would happen if I was just somebody just back home would just call me and I couldn't have no family around, you know, to come in and comfort me and, you know, show me some support. You know, what happened to my brother at a young age, I was so surprised, and I couldn't, you know, handle that situation.
He just lost his composure, and he was down, weak, but he knew in the back of his mind he had to be tough for his mother.
Byron flew home to Louisiana, but returned to Maryland 5 days later. With Clyde and Darlene staying behind, this time he turned to one of his basketball brothers, Juan Dixon, who'd lost both of his parents to AIDS.
I just try to provide a lot of support. You know, I know what Byron was going through, and I just told him to stay strong, and his brother would want him to work hard and continue to go out there and play well.
It seems as if he's playing with a greater sense of resolve now.
I think he realized how important basketball was to him. You could just see the passion for the game come back, because, you know, you always have that. It's just sometimes it's stronger than other times.
I just want to say I gave my maximum effort. And, you know, I think that's my brother. That's what he always asks for, just give my maximum effort. He knew I loved to play basketball. He knew I had to get my education to be successful. And I remember that he just said, Byron, I just want you to be successful. And that's what I live by from this day forward.
If you happen to see Byron Mouton out and about, you'll probably notice the string of rosary beads that have become a fixture around his neck. He said, it's a constant reminder to me of how precious life is, and a message to my brother that he's always in my thoughts. Greg?
Bonnie, thank you. One of the keys to Maryland's success will be its ability to establish the 6'8", 260-pound Lonnie Baxter as a force in the paint. We ask our own wide body to demonstrate what Kansas has to do to neutralize Baxter.
Maryland likes to get the ball to their outstanding low-post player, Lonnie Baxter, in a number of ways. We're going to show you one of those ways here on the court in just a moment. To help me do that, members of the NABC All-Star team, Darius Sangala from Wake Forest, Robert Archibald from Illinois, Andy Ellis from Texas Tech, Jason Capel from North Carolina, and John Linehan from Providence. As we break out and set up in one particular set that Maryland uses to get Lonnie Baxter the ball on the low post. Darius Sungala is going to play Lonnie Baxter. I'll defend him. Then on the baseline, we have Andy Ellis pretending to be Chris Wilcox of Maryland. And then out front is Steve Blake with the ball because he'll be the passer most of the time for Maryland. What they like to do is try to set a cross screen for Baxter. As I bump him, I want to be ready for that cross screen and try to beat him to the spot. Once he catches, I want to try to get to his left shoulder because that's the way Baxter wants to turn. And if I can do that, you can make it tough for him to score the basketball. Kansas, I think, can play this way effectively because Drew Gooden, Nick Collison, and Wayne Simeon have good, strong bodies, active feet, and they're very tall and long. And I think if they can beat Baxter to the spot and then challenge his shot with their length, that could be good defense for Kansas.
Clark, maybe the original premise was wrong. I think you have to keep Baxter from just going crazy on you, but I'm not sure at all that you can completely neutralize him.
No, you can't, but you got to make him work for all of his opportunities, and to do that, you've got to try to beat him to the spot, and you've got to KYP, know your personnel, study that scouting report, lay on his left shoulder, and make him shoot over taller, extended defenders. And if you do that and take care of the weak side board, I think you've got a chance to negate him keep him from having that big explosive game.
All right, Clark, it's nice to see that you still have the sweats on too. Up next, behind all the hype and hoopla of the Final Four, are some student athletes who are quietly working within the system to help reform the way college sports is conducted. We'll hear from them when we continue from Atlanta right after this.
Follow the NCAA tournament with live scores, stats, and analysis in the Game Center only at cbs.sportsline.com or on America Online. Enter keyword CBS Sportsline.
The Sooners cheerleaders and band getting an early start on this national semifinal Saturday. Across town, they're leading a pep rally for the Oklahoma fans at the team's hotel, and that excitement is soon going to spill over into the Georgia Dome. And welcome back to Hoop City as we continue on the Final Four show. Time now for a look beneath the surface of college basketball. Armen Keteyian sat down with a panel of student athletes to focus on the games behind the games.
Welcome to our annual NCAA Issues Roundtable. Later on, I'll sit down with Ced Dempsey, the outgoing president of the NCAA. But right now, I'm joined by 3 of the more than 360,000 student athletes who participate in a total of 22 NCAA-sponsored sports. They're also members of the NCAA's Student Athlete Advisory Committee. Michael Aguirre, who played football at Arizona State. Brianna Williams, a basketball player at Division II Mount Olive College in North Carolina. And from Division III Whittier College, Dwayne Barnes, a former football player and vice chair of the advisory committee. Before we talk, let's take a look at what might be called your competition, a rival group looking to shake up intercollegiate athletics. That group is the Collegiate Athletic Coalition. Founded by several former UCLA football players in January 2001, the coalition recently joined ranks with the United Steelworkers Union in a bold attempt to organize a National Players Association, in essence a union of big-time college football and basketball players. The coalition's platform is built around the belief that student athletes live below the poverty line and deserve better basic protections. In a 60 Minutes piece, it said it's pushing for a share of the billions of dollars in revenue generated by collegiate sport, a sharp increase in health and insurance benefits, and a steep reduction in time demands in so-called voluntary workouts.
An NCAA official rule book reads that a student athlete isn't supposed to put in more than 20 hours of mandatory service a week.
If they say it's 20 hours a week, what is it really?
Anywhere between 30 and 60 hours. I think it can get that high.
So, Michael, what do you think? A lot of issues on the table there.
There are a lot of issues that are being discussed, and I think the important thing is that those same issues are discussed by the Student Athlete Advisory Committees on all 3 levels.
Brianna, I mean, is your voice independent enough? Is it powerful enough right now to deal with more money, pay for play, health insurance, a reduction in time demands?
The Division II Student Athlete Advisory Committee has a direct voice, influenced in NCAA policy and bylaws and rules and regulations. I think the Student Athlete Advisory Committee has a direct impact on student welfare issues.
As far as the Division III standpoint,
I think we're a little bit unique in that we get to sit on the voting floor at the convention every year and actually get to voice our opinions about what issues we want to see passed and what issues we don't want to see in the NCAA structure.
Well, let's take the first issue. You know, basically, student athletes should get a bigger piece of what has now become $1 billion pie. Now, I know you've worked on Proposition 62, Division I, where student athletes can actually work during the season and make up to as much as $2,000. Is that enough?
Well, I think it's important that we continue to look for opportunities to allow student athletes to maximize the benefits they can receive at their institution. Part of that, along with the work proposals, are allowing student athletes to receive the full cost of attendance rather than what that is currently, which is about a $2,000 to $3,000 difference. And the Division I Student Athlete Advisory Committee is actively looking at ways to make that happen. But I think we need to be responsible in the decisions that we make as well when we look at the fact that we are representing not just football and basketball student athletes, but student athletes across all sports, and to make sure that our decisions are responsible fiscally for all of those teams and for every student athlete across the country.
What about the time demands? I mean, how that 20-hour rule, is that realistic, Dwayne?
I think the time demands, from Division III standpoint, we want to have a little bit more time with our sport instead of just being able to play your sport and then having to go to class. We'd like to have off-season workouts. We'd like to have non-traditional seasons, and that's always things we fought for and got a chance to kind of improve over the years.
They're not voluntary now, are they really? I mean, it's kind of mandatory voluntary. Is that how it really works?
I think now it supports student-athlete welfare by enabling them to choose which workouts they attend in the preseason and the postseason, especially when there's academic conflict.
And what about the health insurance issue? It's not, if you're in a voluntary workout situation, you're not really covered now under the NCAA guidelines, are you?
Well, part of that, that we need to, like I said, we need to continue to improve and look at ways that we can make that happen. In April, and actually in a week, the Division I Student Athlete Advisory Committee will be hearing a report on possibilities of providing 24-hour-a-day, 7 days a week insurance for student athletes. At the minimum, we need to provide student athletes insurance every time that they step out on the field, whether it's voluntary or mandatory, and I think the Student Athlete Advisory Committee will help usher in those great changes.
Brianna, would you like a stronger voice at the conventions? And Michael, would you like a stronger voice at the convention to be able to have greater voting rights?
I think that's a great thing for us that we have a chance on the convention floor to actually speak to the Management Council and to the President's Council and some of the representatives that represent us.
I think it's always natural to want to have more.
Yeah.
I think we're happy with where we are right now. We feel like we have the ear of the people who make the decisions in intercollegiate athletics, and we've worked very hard to make sure that they respect our voice, and I think we're making great strides. We have a long way to go. We would like to make some improvements, but I think we're very comfortable with the level of influence that we have in the governance process.
Well, the coalition is obviously calling for a much stronger level. I mean, they're talking, in essence, having a union or an advocacy group, a very strong advocacy group outside the parameters, let's say, of intercollegiate athletics and forcing from the outside in. Is that necessary?
I think what is necessary is to continue to find ways to get student athletes to be engaged in the process. Part of the problem that we're seeing right now is that across the campuses, across the country, we're not getting the type of participation that would maximize the student-athlete voice.
And it starts at the campus Student-Athlete Advisory Committee level and works through the conference SACs and then up to the national SAC.
I think the important thing to remember as well is that the Student-Athlete Advisory Committee serve at the request of student-athletes. We represent student-athletes to our fullest, and we do whatever we can do to make sure that their voice is heard.
Well, thank you very much to all three of you.
Thank you.
When we come back, a conversation with outgoing NCAA President Ced Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Final Four show in Atlanta, where we await this evening's NCAA basketball national semifinals. A few moments ago, we heard from the students. Now Armin gives equal time to the outgoing president of the NCAA, Ced Dempsey.
I'm joined now by Ced Dempsey, who took over as president of the NCAA in January 1994 and has steered his association with distinction through some turbulent times over the last 7 years. He will retire at the end of this year. In the previous segment, we heard about the Collegiate Athletic Coalition. We've heard what the student athletes feel about it. What's your perspective?
Well, I've always been a strong advocate for student athletes and them having a voice in intercollegiate sports, and we were even prepared to talk to the former student athletes at UCLA. We went to the National Student Athlete Advisory Committee and discussed that with them, and once I think they brought the union people into it, I think our own board felt that it was not in the best interest of the association.
You spoke passionately and very articulately about education, paramount in your mind, that athletics must teach. Is that happening right now?
Well, I think it happens in some places, and I think in other places we're falling short in that area.
Why is the mission falling short in your mind? You spoke about the mores, more money, more self-interest. You know, we're paying more money, more.
I think in Divisions 2 and 3, we still see a very strong emphasis and balance in the educational mission. I think when we get into the Division 1 area, which I worked as an athletic director for over 2 decades in, it's obvious that we have a financial dilemma that we're dealing with. When we passed a principle in 1978 in Division 1 that institutions should be as self-sufficient as possible financially, that began to create an imbalance to me between that financial necessity and the educational mission.
In your speech, you also spoke about what you called a trust gap that's building up between the NCAA, the public, the media, and how do you bridge that?
I think what the general public sees is us preaching one message, and they see so many examples of another message, and that creates a mistrust, I think, of what we're trying to accomplish.
What's the message that you're preaching, and what is the public hearing?
Well, we hope we're still preaching that educational mission message, and that actually the participation of student athletes in sports and higher education does have an educational experience opportunity for them. On the other hand, we see certainly examples of where that probably is not happening. We see poor graduation rates in many areas, and we see violations, I think, of student athletes, and certainly what we've heard earlier in terms of the time demands. I think student athletes see that as hypocrisy within our rules and regulations. It's those kind of mixed messages that create, I think, that lack of trust that is of concern to me.
You've talked about a roadmap to reform for the NCAA. If you had to drive someplace first, where would it be?
Well, I think we go back to our values. I think that should start our roadmap. And we have a set of principles within the association, 16 principles, which are solid principles. But too often we don't make decisions based upon those principles.
And who's going to pull this car back on the road? Is it going to be the college presidents? I mean, it would seem to me that it has to be the college presidents.
Everybody's got quick answers to intercollegiate athletics, but it is a complex system, and it has grown into a very important system in higher education. And presidents know they have to be involved in it because of the implications back up on their administration. It needs to be a collective effort, but certainly probably driven by presidents on a college campus.
Well, good luck, Sed. Enjoy that good life in La Jolla, California for a while.
Thank you very much, Armin. Looking forward to it.
Armin, thank you. We had our best wishes to Sed Dempsey on his retirement. And 2 other longtime NCAA executives are also leaving their posts. Wally Renfro is retiring as public relations director. Jim Marchione, the media director for the tournament, will become an associate athletic director at the University of Connecticut. And through the years, both have been tremendously helpful to our coverage of the NCAA tournament. We thank them and we wish them well. Just a moment ago, there's Mike Davis, the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers in his 2nd year at IU. He's taken the Hoosiers to the Final Four, and they will face Oklahoma in the first matchup here today. And speaking of the Sooners, Kelvin Sampson leads his Sooners off the bus and into the Georgia Dome. The last time Oklahoma reached the championship game in 1988, they lost to Kansas. Kelvin Sampson would like to reach that title game again here on Monday night. Earlier this week, ironically, on the 10th anniversary of the Fab Five's first trip to the Final Four, a federal indictment cast a shadow over one of the most successful chapters in Michigan basketball history.
Look at Davis fighting for it with the sprained ankle on the floor. Rose at the other end.
And it's 10 years to the weekend of the Fab Five. And some people gonna love it, some people gonna hate it, just like back then. But the bottom line is we were able to get it done. Yeah, we didn't win it all, but we won a lot more. And in life, sometimes you got to come in second to appreciate first.
A decade ago at Michigan, 5 fabulous freshmen came together to push defending champ Duke to the brink. and then they earned a return trip to the finals and received another hard lesson.
Michigan have to bring it.
Oh, he walked and the referee missed it.
Weber brings it into the front court. They have no timeouts remaining.
Oh, he caused too many timeouts. That's a technical foul.
He called a timeout. Michigan doesn't have any.
A huge mental mistake.
Apparently, the lessons are still being learned in Ann Arbor. Last week, a former Michigan booster, Ed Martin, was indicted. Among the charges, loaning more than $600,000 to Chris Weber and 3 other Michigan players.
I think the figures are a lot overblown because of the scenarios overblown. Everybody wants to play it up as such a huge thing, but that's 10 years ago. You know, he allowed a guy like Jalen Rose who needed a winter coat to have a winter coat. He allowed a guy like Jalen Rose to go over his house and cut grass in order to make ends meet. But as far as him being the University of Michigan booster and him being an influence on the 5-5, that's ludicrous.
10 years have passed, but once again, the basketball world's focus has fallen on the Fab Five.
I think when you have a crisis of the nature that Michigan is facing at this time, you have everybody's attention. And I think you can take that and build a value system where you want it to go and have a tremendous impact upon possibly changing some things that Michigan might like to change and haven't been able to for a long period of time. So I think it can be a very positive opportunity for Michigan, and I think they're going to take advantage of it.
Still to come as we continue from Atlanta, the Oklahoma Sooners are more than a team that shares a winning attitude. They are a family, and we'll meet some of them, including the West Region's most outstanding player, Hollis Price. And what happens when the Final Four teams open their locker room doors for our cameras? We're treated to an ultimate look inside. And next, if you think there's a lot of pushing, shoving, and jawing on the court, you should see the lobby at the coaches' convention.
10 years ago, Fred Couples hit his tee shot here at 12, and somehow it stayed dry on his way to the green jacket, a tradition unlike any other. The Masters on CBS.
Welcome back, everyone. And just a few moments ago, we showed you the Indiana Hoosiers arriving here in the Georgia Dome. And just a moment ago, Armen Keteyian caught up with 2 key Hoosiers.
Tom, first of all, how's the left ankle, and are you going to play tonight? You going to start? What's the status?
I'm not sure about starting, but I'm definitely going to play. This is the Final Four, so if I can't, it'd be disappointing if I couldn't play. So I'm just going to go out there and, obviously not be 100%, but just do the best I can.
What's your biggest concern? Is it the conditioning, or is it the lateral movement of the ankle?
I think it's just cutting off of it and sprinting is what I've had the hardest problem with, but. It's obviously going to be limit to me some stuff, stuff I want to do, but, I just want to be out there and compete with my teammates. So I'm pretty happy that I'm getting to play.
All right, Tom. Jared, quick question for you. You're the top shooting team in the tournament, 56%. Is that the answer to Oklahoma, or is there something else in mind?
You got to get the foul line against them. They'll foul you if you get to the basket, so we got to make a really good opportunity to get to the rim and get fouled and hit free throws.
All right. Good luck, Jared. Thank you.
So you heard Tom Coverdale tell Armen Keteyian that he thinks he's going to play. He's not sure if he is going to start. Also arriving here in the Dome, the Oklahoma Sooners. And Bonnie Bernstein had a chance to talk with Coach Kelvin Sampson.
All right, with Oklahoma coach Kelvin Sampson, your point guard, much like Indiana's, in a little bit of trouble, suffered an ankle sprain earlier in the week. You told me he's shoot around.
Right. I think he's going to be okay. There's if a kid is 80 or 90% going into the game, I think whatever he lacks, he'll make up with adrenaline and excitement. When you get this far, these kids will play with injuries.
So safe to say he's starting then, right?
He's going to start.
Okay, let me ask you about your father. Had emergency brain surgery before the West Regional got underway in San Jose. You were hoping to have him here today. Were we a yay or nay here?
Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to make it. I think that the fact that it was a major surgery and having to travel all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast really tired him up. I think the head area is improving. He'll be okay eventually. He's just not feeling up to come into the game.
All right, Coach, thanks for the time.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Coach, and thank you. And as we take a look inside the Indiana locker room, and is it as quiet as you expect, Clark?
Oh, without question. These guys are locked in. You see Jeffrey Newton there, George Leach Newton with the headphones on. That's typical pregame preparation for a lot of college basketball players these days.
And do you think these guys are thinking about their situation as it affects them regarding Tom Coverdale, or are they past that?
I think they're past it because they probably prepared all week, Greg, knowing that he was going to be limited if he played at all.
Meanwhile, the Oklahoma Sooners, and things are equally cool, calm, and quiet, not at all like it'll be moments before they step out onto the floor.
Well, once they get between those lines, it'll ramp up quite a bit, but in the meantime, players like to prepare by reading, listening to music of their choice. Some guys go over the scouting report, and it looks like a couple of Oklahoma Sooners perusing the Final Four program right there.
Yeah, I just thought that, and I've said it a couple of times this week, I think these Oklahoma Sooners, for the most part, have been flying under the radar, and a lot of people have been underestimating them. What a mistake that is.
Well, they've caused a lot of turbulence by the way they've played if they've flown under the radar, and that's exactly how they'll try to play.
So,
disrupt Indiana all game long.
Yeah, so both these teams in the building as we prepare for the first semifinal matchup of the night. Everywhere you turn here in Atlanta this week, chances are you'll bump into fans of the Final Four teams, but the biggest group of people talking basketball in town is the coaches at their convention. Author John Feinstein set his sights on the sultans of the sweatsuit.
To most college basketball fans, the Final Four is 3 games, the culmination of a college basketball season. To America's basketball coaches, most of whom are inside this lobby right now, the games are a mere backdrop to a week-long party which consists of a little bit of business, the annual coaches convention, a lot of storytelling, and an unending stream of gossip. Here at the Coaches Hotel, just getting through the lobby to an elevator can be a challenge. You will encounter every kind of person associated with college basketball, ranging from rich and famous coaches to equipment reps to street agents. It is a melting pot of the basketball culture. The lobby can be a tough place for coaches who expected to be working Final Four week. 10 years ago, after his team had been upset in the second round by Texas El Paso, Kansas coach Roy Williams was accosted by an irate fan in the lobby. "Do you know how bad you guys messed up my bracket?" the fan screamed. Almost always mild-mannered in public, Williams decided he'd heard enough. "Messed up your bracket," he screamed back. "How about what it did to my life?" Several years prior to that, top-ranked North Carolina was upset in the Sweet 16 by Indiana. When Dean Smith arrived in Seattle for the Final Four, he was asked at the rental counter what kind of car he'd reserved. "Actually," he replied, "I reserved a bus. Was planning to bring my team on this trip." The correct clothing for the lobby is a sweatsuit. The currency of the lobby is gossip. A rumor can start as a whisper in one corner and be an absolute fact within minutes. In 1988, word spread one morning that Jim Valvano had accepted the job at UCLA. When Valvano got to town, an army of cameras and notebooks was waiting for him. He walked in wearing an NC State sweatsuit. So much for that rumor. Often it can be sad watching fired coaches in the lobby. Many will come with resumes in hand, cornering anybody who has a job opening. But there are happier moments too. Like many retired coaches, John Wooden has almost always come back to the convention to be among his coaching brethren. In 1984, he brought his wife Nell with him. By then, Nell Wooden was gravely ill, confined to a wheelchair. Late one night, after the Woodens had spent the evening chatting with friends, John Wooden stood and began pushing his wife toward the elevators. As he did, almost everyone stopped what they were doing. The applause started slowly and picked up steam quickly. By the time the Woodens reached the elevator, everyone in the place was clapping. John Wooden has enjoyed many ovations during his long life. It may well be that he never enjoyed one more than the one he and Nell received that night.
John, thank you. Right now, let's go down to the court where Leslie Visser is with one lucky fan who will try to turn Hoop City into Candyland. Leslie.
That is true, Greg. You're going to love this. I'm at the Reese's Fast Break here at the Final Four. I'm joined by Amanda Morris of Concord, North Carolina. Amanda, as you know, you have 8 seconds to dribble up the court and try to make a shot. And if she makes it, she wins a lifetime supply of Reese's candy for her friends and family. I now consider myself one of her friends. Are you ready, Amanda?
Yeah, I've been practicing for a few weeks, so I'm feeling pretty ready right now.
Great. What kind of a shot should we look for?
Well, since I have 8 seconds right now, I'm feeling most comfortable with shooting a layup, so I think that's what I'm going to go with.
Well, you hit a couple in practice. Why don't you go over and get ready? Good luck to you, Amanda. Well, Amanda, these last couple of weeks has been coached by NBA great, our buddy Muggsy Bogues. Muggsy, what have you been telling her?
Well, I've been trying to get her to focus on just getting from one end to the other quick as she possibly can and keep up, be aware of the shot clock and just make that layup. And I think she's ready. She's been doing a great job.
Well, if there's anyone who knows how to get up the court quickly, it's you, Muggsy. Thanks. Let's watch it. Amanda. Okay, tell us about the shot.
I was really nervous. I just tried to get down there in the fastest time and just take my time and make my layup.
I think you might transfer from Carolina to Connecticut. You could play for them. Congratulations to you. And to make a presentation, I'd like to bring in Milt Matthews of Hershey's Foods. Right. Milt, what do you have for her?
Thanks, Leslie. Hey, congratulations. Great job. On behalf of Hershey, a lifetime supply of Hershey Reese products. Great.
Pretty great.
What?
Pretty great.
Yes, it's really great. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to all of you. And Greg and Clark, I'll get some of those Reese's peanut butter cups. Back to you.
We'll be right there, Leslie. Coming up, we'll take you inside March Madness when the Final Four show continues on CBS after this message and a word from your local station.